Hello everyone and welcome back today. We have got another amazing video for you. Do you guys remember the Punic Wars? Well, we're going to talk about the third and final conflict between Rome and Carthage. So let's not waste any more time and let's begin. Before we get into the events of the Third War, let us recap the preceding events. We left off with the Second Punic War, which had proven devastating for the Carthaginian Empire. Despite Hannibal Barca's initial onslaught against the Romans in both Spain and Italy, the Romans had rallied behind their leaders. Most notable amongst them was Scipio Afcricanus, who had finally put an end to Hannibal Barca's nearly unbeaten streak in the Battle of Zama. Following the defeat, Carthage had been forced to unconditionally surrender. It was stripped of its navy and was not allowed to marshal a large military force. In addition to this, Carthage had to pay the Romans a heavy fine, and all their war elephants were taken to Rome. Rome had finally transitioned from a regional power to a global superpower. Despite the harsh terms of the treaty following the Second Punic War, Carthage recovered relatively quickly. Coins and trade goods from that period can be found all across the Mediterranean. Some items even reached the Balkans. All of this can be seen as an attestation to the city's recovery based on the resumption of trade. Although Carthage was no longer a military power, they, however, managed to recover most of their economic might. During this time, they maintained cordial, if not friendly, ties with Rome, and always managed to pay the reparations from the Second Punic War to Rome on time. The relations reached a peak when Carthage exiled their great general Hannibal Barca, who was considered one of Rome's biggest enemies. Hannibal was forced to flee to the court of Antiochus III in Syria. Alongside all these displays of fealty, Carthage even supported Rome in its military campaigns elsewhere. All of this effort from Carthage was not reciprocated by the Romans, who still held a grudge against Carthage for Hannibal Barca's campaign in Italy. The great general had inflicted some of the most humiliating and costly defeats on the Roman army and would have even conquered Rome itself had it not been for the delay in his reinforcements. Despite the positive outlook in relations, the cracks between the two empires were too deep, and conflict always loomed on the horizon. One of the biggest causes of animosity between the two powers was the Numidians. Massinissa ruled over the Numidians and had formed an alliance with the Romans. Steadily, they had been extending their territory, and by 200 BCE, they controlled what was once considered half of Carthage's territory. Even after this, Massinissa continued to expand his territory, and the years 193, 182, 172, and 162 BC all played host to Numidians' encroachment and attacks on Carthaginian land. The absence of a large military force worsened the situation for Carthage, who was forced to plead for Roman assistance. The Romans themselves were biased and favored the Numidians and did little to stop the attacks. In truth, the Roman elite was divided between the warmongering and level-headed senators. Thus, the empire was content with letting the Numidians cause trouble for Carthage rather than declare a full-scale war on Carthage. Finally, the situation came to a head in 153 BC, when repeated Numidian raids finally made Rome send a delegation to Carthage. In truth, it was a spy mission led by Cato the Elder. During the investigation of claims of injustice, Cato was particularly disturbed when he looked at the apparent wealth and prestige of a seemingly defeated city. So on returning to Rome, he made it his mission to make the Romans wage one last war against Carthage and forever remove the city as a threat to the might of Rome. Cato made a speech before the Senate in a very dramatized setting. He shook his toga, and large African figs fell from them, seemingly by accident, as the other senators marveled at the size and the beauty of the figs. Cato said that these are but a 3 days' ride away from Rome. Cato was trying to show the Senate that the Roman treaty had done little to control the power of Carthage, and their financial prosperity might translate into danger for Rome in the later years. From this time till the final declaration of war, Cato used to utter the famous line, besides which, my opinion is that Carthage must be destroyed, after every comment on the subject of Carthage. In 151 BC, disillusioned by Roman indifference, a party that opposed Roman appeasement came to power, and it was at this time Massinissa laid siege to a Carthaginian town. Once again, Carthage asked Rome to intervene, but the requests fell on deaf ears. And so the new government raised a force of 25,000 new recruits and attempted to lift the siege. The fairly inexperienced army was crushed by the Numidians. But the worst thing was that a Roman military tribune, Publius Cornelius Scipio, who had been sent from Spain to procure war elephants, was there to witness the massacre. He immediately sent a report to Rome detailing the events of the battle. But his report of a great Numidian victory was translated into a Carthaginian breach of the treaty. Finally, the voices of warmongering senators were heard, and now Rome had a perfectly good excuse to go to war. After all, Carthage had waged war without Rome's approval, and that too against an ally of Rome. The Third Punic War was about to begin. The Carthaginians sent envoys to explain their actions and appease the Romans, but all attempts at peace were rebuffed. The mighty Roman Empire was now on the warpath. Even before the Roman military had been dispatched, a longtime ally of Carthage, the city of Utica, defected to the Roman cause. The city would provide a good landing spot for the Roman forces and was just a day's sail away from Carthage. Initially, the Senate played with the Carthaginians and asked 300 noble children as hostages. But soon, their true intentions were revealed, and officially, war was declared. A huge army of 80,000 infantry and 4,000 cavalry was dispatched to North Africa. Initially, the Romans demanded that for an unconditional Carthaginian surrender, under which the army would be disbanded, all arms would be handed over to the Romans, and all prisoners would be released. However, the most difficult and harshest term of the surrender was that citizens of Carthage would leave the city and settle at a place which is not closer than 16 kilometers to the coast. This term betrayed the Roman intention of once and for all destroying the prosperous trading hub. Not left with much to lose, Carthage decided to make one final stand. Slaves were released from the city, and a Carthaginian army of 30,000 men was recalled from the Numidian border. The city and its 200,000 population now prepared for a siege which was to last for the next 3 years. The Roman force was led by the consuls Marcius Censorinus and Manius Manilius, but the initial engagements didn't go well for the Romans. Carthage had 34 kilometers of a defensive wall to shelter behind. Parts of this wall were built in a triple defense line, while others were defended by moats, palisades, ditches, and the sea. The defenders resisted everything the Romans threw at them, and managed to hold on longer than expected. The biggest factor in all of this was that the Roman army had been unable to completely seal the port, and merchant ships were able to deliver much-needed supplies to the besieged city. On top of all of this, the Carthaginians launched counterattack sorties, including sending out fire ships that would burn the Roman vessels and sometimes managed to blow up the Roman siege engines. All of this was compounded when an epidemic hit the Roman forces in the summer of 148 BCE. The Carthaginian army had been unable to reach the city in time, but they continued to be a menace for the Romans. The city of Hippacra refused to surrender despite sustained Roman attacks led by Consul Piso. The city was further assisted by a new Numidian king, Bithyas, who sent 800 cavalry to help against the Romans. It looked like this war would drag on to epic proportions like the previous one. Soon, the Roman commanders were replaced, and the control of the army was instead given to Publius Cornelius Scipio Aemilianus. He was a young and able commander, and his first move was to build a better siege wall around Carthage and its harbor, including a mole in the south side of the city. The mole blocked the access of merchants to Carthage's harbor, which in turn blocked the route of the internal naval harbor. A small Carthaginian fleet tried to break the blockade by sailing through a new second exit, but both times they failed and were forced to retreat. Scopio then systematically set about attacking the walls near the harbor. The defenders responded by destroying some of the Roman siege engines, but the Romans continued to persist, and soon they were able to take control of the second entrance to the harbor that had been created by the Carthaginians. Finally, after choking the city from further resupply, Scopio felt the time was right to deal with the Carthaginian army, which had barricaded itself at Nepharis, which was 25 kilometers south of the capital. Finally, after a 3-week-long siege, the Carthaginian military was defeated, and once again, the Romans continued their onslaught on the city. The final Roman attack came in the spring of 146 BCE. Once again, the harbor was selected as the point of entry, and this time, the Roman forces were finally able to break through the defensive lines and started advancing through the city. After 7 days of brutal street fighting and looting by ill-disciplined legionnaires, only the citadel was left standing. The citadel was occupied by the Carthaginian commander Hasdrubal and 900 Roman deserters who had fortified the temple of Eshumun. Hasdrubal could expect no mercy, as he had tortured captured Roman soldiers on the battlements earlier in the war and knew that the Romans would want revenge for their fallen brothers. When the Roman onslaught picked pace, Hasdrubal handed himself over to the Romans, but his wife, in shame and outrage, threw herself and her 2 children on a massive funeral pyre. The remaining soldiers followed her example. Finally, Carthage had fallen. All the surviving inhabitants were enslaved, and the city was put to the torch. There is a myth that the land was later sprayed with salt so that no resettlement was possible. A curse was then set on the person who attempted to resettle the area. North Africa was officially made a Roman province, while the cities that had proven loyal to Rome, such as Utica, were given the privilege of tax exemption. Utica was made the new capital of the province. For his exploits and service, Scipio Aemilianus Africanus was awarded a triumph in Rome and given the title of Scipio Afcricanus the Younger to distinguish him from his predecessor. Carthage remained uninhabited until the city was refounded by Julius Caesar and further encouraged by Augustus a century later. We all know that history is written by the victors, and something quite similar happened in the case of Carthage. Generation after generation of Roman writers based Carthaginian society and culture. But it was extremely resilient. Both the Punic culture and language remained dominant in small settlements and the countryside long after Rome had razed the city. In the later centuries, Rome would face many challenges, but its conflict with Carthage has its own significance. With the victory in the First Punic War, Rome was able to establish its first external province in Sicily. Then, in the Second War, despite repeated losses, the will of the Roman public won out, and once again, Rome was able to expand its influence all over Spain. Finally, As a result of the Third War, North Africa was finally added to the Roman Empire. Its trade and wealth were extremely important for the empire and allowed Rome to further strengthen its control over its territories. So that's about it for today, folks. Hope you liked the video. Let us know about the next historical event you want us to cover in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to view more of our amazing videos directly on your feeds. Oh, and one last thing. Do hit the bell icon to receive instant notifications from our side. Goodbye for now. We will be back with more amazing videos for you. Adios.